Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. It is 6:03 p.m. I would like to request board members make a motion to head into executive session. We would like to go into executive session in accordance with Public Officers Law, Article 7, Section 105, District Policy 1525, to discuss matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person. We will return to open session at 7 p.m. So, Amanda? Second. Second by Carrie. All those in favor of heading into executive session? Aye. Aye. Great. Let's do it. We'll be back. Okay, the board is just in executive session. I would like to request a motion to return to regular session.
So moved.
First by Gary, second by Amanda. The board is now back in regular session. We will move on with the agenda. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is at the back. I am going to ask Carrie to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. We do have 6 board members here. We are at item C, which is the opportunity for public comment. The board encourages public expression. At board meetings, speakers may comment on matters relating to agenda items. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving individual district personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should present their comments and concerns to their superintendent during regular business hours. Speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Personal attacks, obscene language, light statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. Total time allowed is 30 minutes with the option to extend by vote. There's a 3 to 5 minute allotment per speaker. We offer a comment period at the beginning of regular meetings and a second period at the end, but generally we do not receive public comments at special meetings. We ask speakers to identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Anybody who'd like to make a public comment, now is your chance. Just make sure you state your name and address clear just so it gets in the minutes.
So my name is Kimberly Baker Bringus. We live at 1083 Jewett Road in Skaneateles. So I understand that there's not a lot that I can do. And sorry I have to bring something because I'm not really good at public speaking.
You're just fine, don't worry.
So, so my first experience with the 4th grade wax museum was over 2 decades ago. So coming from a Chicago suburb, I came out to visit my sister and attended my nephew's wax museum. So I walked through it and I had at the time a 2-year-old and I literally was like, this is the kind of school I want him to go to. So I moved out here from Chicago with my then, it's about a year and a half later, and he went to school starting here in 1998, starting kindergarten. So my 2 sons did the wax museum, and I was so wowed by it originally that I would tell like clients and friends, and my mom and dad from Chicago would come up, and I mean there was always a huge line going out of the wax museum. It was fun to get everything ready. Like my one son was Alexander Graham Bell, and we didn't have a phone, so he used a banana. My other son was Houdini, and we had a straight jacket and a big chest that he laid in the whole entire time. And just everyone who would come to see it would just always make the same comment, like, "Wow, this is amazing! Like your district goes above and beyond." And I felt like so proud to be at a district like that. So this year I learned that the event was canceled. I didn't see it on the calendar when my now 10-year-old, so I have a big age span between my kids, so I've seen it from both. You know, a lot of people that are in the 4th grade now, unless their parents have done it, they haven't seen what the wax museum is. Our teacher particularly, she probably shouldn't have an experience with the wax museum because I think she maybe started during COVID. So whenever I didn't see it on the thing, I asked, like, what's going on? Where's the wax museum? Because when he started in State Street, I said, oh, we're going to do the wax museum next year. I'm so excited. And then it wasn't there. So I was really bummed. I asked, I always trust the school district. I always trust the teachers. When they change curriculum, I'm they know best, this isn't my lane, so I should stay out of it, but this was something that was parent involved. And that's what I loved about it. Like, everyone probably who has done it with their kids could tell you exactly what their kids were and remember sort of the experience of going through it. So what I always felt was that our district went above and beyond, and that's what they ask of the kids, is to give that extra 10%. And now, not like realizing that it's not in there anymore, I'm like, what else is going to be not doing? Like, what else are we not going to do? Not the science fair? Like, so it just makes me really sad. I feel already that my son's in 4th grade now, that normally I think they did the wax museum in March, so I don't even know if it can even be put back. I don't really know who to even get to help put it back, and I don't even know if it will be. But I wanted to come because I understand that the school board doesn't have anything to do with it, but I wanted to come on record because I talk about it a lot at my work. I own a hair salon in Skinny Atlas, and if I know like there's kids or parents, I'm like, do you remember the wax museum? And everybody is like, oh God, yeah. I'm like, it's not going to be anywhere. What? How can it be? My grandchildren won't be able to do it. This is terrible. What can be done? And I'm like, I don't know. So this is, maybe nothing can come of it, but at least I don't feel like I'm just like, yeah, it's gone. I'm so sad. That's it. So I wrote a letter to everyone on the board because I was told by a friend of mine, like, just write to them as a starting point. I am going to talk with Eric tomorrow, and I understand that there's a lot of moving parts. I understand with COVID, like, some things just got with, even in my business, like, you know, something simple, we stopped serving coffee because, you know, you shouldn't be touching glasses. And afterwards, we're like, well, people are so used to not having the coffee, so do we really need to have the coffee? And then I start thinking about how long we had served coffee and how nice coffee tastes when someone else makes it for you. And so, yeah, it would be really easy for us just to say, you know what, we haven't done it for a while, we don't need to do it, but we immediately were like, no, that's something we have to do. Like, it's easy to get into, like, we stopped doing it because of COVID, but some things are hard work, but some things are also worth it, just so these future kids can have the same memories that my kids had and the same memories that me as a parent had. And so I'm hoping it's not a final end to the wax museum, but I'm a little afraid that it could be. So the letter that I wrote to the board members was, dear board members, I write to express my concerns with the decision to remove the wax museum for the 4th grade experience. I've yet to receive any understandable justification for removal, and I hope to plead your individual memories and experiences with your children doing this in hopes that you will listen and reconsider. Both of my older children who graduated in 2012 and 2017 have the fondest memories of the experience, as do countless others. Students and families, this was an activity to do together, a rare occurrence in school. The Wax Museum has been a part of not only the State Street experience, but also an integral part of our Skinny Atlas community experience for decades. It engages our students in studying history, reading, writing, oral presentation in school, and community involvement, not to mention the fortitude it took to hold some of the poses. I distinctly remember Keely Greg holding the Peekaboo Street ski hold the entire time, which was like a squat in skis. I respectfully ask those responsible for the decision to not have the Wax Museum to reconsider and allow our 4th graders this wonderful experience. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Anybody else? You guys all look like you would love to get up and say something. You're not just here for a class assignment, I know that. You want to get up and talk? Any takers?
I did ask them to stand and be recognized. If you guys could just stand and introduce yourselves.
Tell us why you're here, because it's not just because this is a good time on a Tuesday night, so.
Somebody had to go first. Thank you.
I'm Yasmin Glazier, and I'm here because I want to learn about the issues in our community at the school.
Is part of participation in government?
Yes.
So just before you guys came in, Francine Grinnell was giving a presentation about high school humanities curriculum, and one of the things in there was the seal of civic readiness, which is another credential that high school students engaged in participation participation government and social studies can pursue. So this is like one of those milestone checkpoint experiences.
I'm Trustee Metz, and I will be honest, I am here for my third public meeting for government.
I'm Molly Nicholson, and along with Chelsea, I'm here for my third public meeting.
I'm Evan Wingfield. I'm here for my second public meeting, but I also wanted to try to understand what actually happened in this building since I've never been here before. And I was kind of confused about what you guys did.
I'm Kyle Palmer, and I am also here for my second public meeting.
And quick, Kyle Palmer also got third this weekend at an indoor track meet, which was the largest in the country with 5,800 participants. He got third in the 300, so
That's amazing.
not to, publicly embarrass you, but that's pretty awesome, and I'm sensitive to the track stuff, so.
I'm Caroline Wells, and I'm also here for Student Gov.
Welcome. Thanks for
Oh,
coming.
thanks for coming, guys. Any other takers on the public comment period? Okay, next up on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from December 6th. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December 6th?
So moved.
First Tim, second Dan. All those in favor of approving the December 6th meeting minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes as well. Next up is superintendent's report on business.
All right, thank you, Danielle. Welcome to our students that are here tonight. Welcome everybody else that came out on a Tuesday to the board meeting. Happy New Year. Welcome back, our first board meeting of 2023. I still write that incorrectly every time I write it. Usually by March I have it down. Really, a couple of key points tonight, and I'll jump in, that budget season is officially upon us. Today, Governor Kathy Hochul held her State of the State meeting, and Connor and Greg and I sat and watched intently for what little pearls of wisdom or nuggets or hints at what sort of legislative priorities would be funded throughout the state. And while schools were not high on the list, there were some real key things that were mentioned. So I'll go through a couple of those. Before I do, what I wanted to point out, and this is a real rarity, New York State School Boards is the professional association that advocates and represents the interests of public schools in New York State to the state legislature, to the governor's office, and really apply political pressure in certain areas to ensure that schools receive adequate funding to support the work of schools. And in my entire career, I've never, ever, ever heard what came out of this publication come out of the governor's mouth in the State of the State until today. So there were a couple of things that, although they were vague and nondescript, I wanted to just highlight. So in the school board's open letter to Governor Hochul, they had highlighted several priorities for public schools. First on their list, and near and dear to our hearts here, was mental health. Very proud of the investments that the school district has made, and way out in front of a lot of other people that are racing to catch up with mental health. Second, NYSBA priority was to support schools in their ongoing cybersecurity efforts. There are multi-million-dollar ransomware attacks happening in school districts that have traditionally been woefully understaffed, underfunded in technology. Free meals, that was another big one that NYSBA advocated for through the state. Reduction of gun violence, especially in schools. CTE opportunities. And then the New York State Board of Regents called for a $3.4 billion increase in state aid. Out of Governor Hochul today, number one on her priority list was safety, school safety, crime, and gun violence was mentioned. Over a $1 billion investment in mental health from the government, from the New York State government. A call for minimum wage to mirror inflation as the value of the dollar has gotten less and less, and those who make less and less have been stretched even thinner. And then lastly, a focus on jobs, CTE, alternative pathways and careers were mentioned, and then a focus on housing. So you can hear there's a little bit of overlap in what NYSBA is talking about and what the governor is talking about, and it took me reading this again for that to bubble to the surface, but again, in my career, typically the governor's office under Governor Cuomo was pretty hostile towards teachers, towards public schools, towards state funding of schools, and this was probably the more encouraging one that we've heard in a while. NYSBA just this evening released their response to the governor's State of the State address today as well, and it was all really positive and hopeful. So it's a nice change from what we're used to this time of year, is begging for information and collaborating to share the financial data that's given to us from the state that involves the school district and ultimately trickles down to what tax implications are for district residents. And it just seems like it's a little bit more collegial this year than usual, so I'll take it. So that's my update on there. In talking with school principals on budget conversations, those are ongoing. A couple other pieces of data, the New York State School Boards Association discovered in some of their surveys and data gathering exercises. A couple of them I just want to share with the board tonight. Number one was that in a survey of New York State school administrators, 61% of respondents highlighted significant learning loss present in schools. So as we start to fund the budget, as we start to look for things that we're going to invest in the future, it's very similar to what you've been seeing for the last year. More interventionists, more interventions, more additional supports for struggling students. 36% of those seen school administrators reported some learning loss. So, I mean, that's an overwhelming amount of public feedback that learning loss is a real thing. Interesting, statewide and less of an issue for us, although I'd say it's somewhat. 86% of respondents talked about significant increases in behavioral issues within schools. At Skaneateles, we haven't seen anywhere near that sort of increase. But that being said, we have seen more than is typical. 14% of people said no. And then lastly, another encouraging piece of data was chronic absenteeism for students from 2019 to 2022, more than doubled across New York State, and that is not a statistic that is true here, which is great. As we return for the new year, people are healthy. We sort of limped to the finish line before the holiday break. We had a lot of people out with flu and sickness and all sorts of other things. And speaking to the principals, and it's actually been really good right now. The budget conversations, as I shared with the school principals, we are looking for efficiencies, as we have, I think, 8 people that have announced so far that they're going to retire this year. We always look for opportunities to either reduce things that are superfluous by attrition, or take those funds and resources and redirect them into some of those other types of things. So when I talk about the need for additional interventionists, that's not always a dollar for dollar increase. It's not always an increase of a person, but a shifting of resources. So those are the conversations that have already started and will continue throughout February. And Connor will get into it more, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but there's been no additional data released from the state that gives us any sort of budget clarity for the school year. But I did want, in closing, to highlight 2 things from the high school. District-wide, first of all, is the second implementation of our BIMAS universal screener. That's happening right now this week. And then lastly, there's some excitement out of the high school. We talked for a moment about the Seal of Civic Readiness that Francine Brunel had mentioned earlier tonight. And then there's some really cool opportunities for those of you that were at the board meeting and had the opportunity to meet with Brian Franco at the stage production demonstration. Brian Franco's music tech class was just approved by OCC as a 4-credit college course offered right here on campus. So that's huge. Testament to a creative teacher and a bunch of people that are supporting that individual and making sure that the experiences that are offered to kids here are second to none. Nobody else has a music tech class anywhere near here. And kudos to Mr. Franco and Mr. Caraccio for making that happen. And then lastly, it is the spring, and I know last year was one of the first years that we really invested in SAT prep, and that will continue again coming in the spring, I believe, starting in March, Mr. Santoro. And that is all for me. Unless the board has any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
With the retirees, is there another career fair planned?
So the two that we had 25 applicants, and so the postings that we have are pretty solid with the applicants pool. But as we go on, there's some changes of administration looking at maybe mixing up some things with, instead of just complete elementary, might go special ed, might go literacy. So yeah, we're going to post them again for sure. But the career fair gave us a good health start, so we have a good foundation of some candidates now.
And Mr. Santoro and his team too have been looking at civil service titles. As some of these positions go away, they were sort of initially conceived maybe many years ago as this thing, and then they've sort of morphed and developed into this other thing. In some cases, we're handcuffed that we have to go through the existing civil service titles and lists. In other cases, as Greg has done a nice job of maneuvering around, it creates some opportunities for us to go off the list and be a little bit more creative in how we fill some of these roles.
I have a list of questions if nobody else has. Okay, so the retirement incentive offered by the state is still in effect?
Until June of this year, as far as we know right now.
Okay, do you anticipate getting more retirements through the end of the school year, or do you think?
Teachers have the end of the month to.
We'll know by January 31.
Oh, and that's a standard date that we always have, regardless of the incentive. January 31 is the date to notify us that you're going to retire so that we can plan accordingly for budget season.
That being said, we do have people will decide later in the game, but typically there's an incentive if they give us a little.
Give us a heads up.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you had to guess, and I won't hold you to a number, but do you think that we are going to see some additional retirements from the ones we've already seen in the past? I mean, every meeting we've had a slew of retirements come through, so.
There's a few folks on our radar that we're wondering if they will, maybe between 1 and 3 additional.
Okay.
If I had to guess.
It's a good number.
But nothing that's going to be shattering like, holy cow, 10 additional, that's, because 10's a lot of teachers to hire that weren't.
No.
Okay. My other question, just to reiterate, you talked about some stuff from the state and the learning loss. I already know the answer, but I'd like to ask it again just so everyone can hear the answer. In our district, every student can benefit from intervention if they are identified as someone who needs help, regardless of whether they have an IEP, 504. That is irrelevant in terms of receiving math and reading intervention.
Well, our RTI process and the multiple measures that we use to identify students, we're more concerned with what a student needs than what label they do or don't have. One of the things that our staff hears me say all the time, and I want to be really careful on how I say this, but an IEP doesn't grant you access to anything other than we can give you any day of the year other than accommodations on state exam. So we have many, many students that don't have any special education identification involved in our RTI and our intervention programs. That IEP, where that comes in, is that if you have a test accommodation, if you have some sort of accommodation that's included on your IEP, you are entitled to that on the day of a state exam. Every other day, we can give the same interventions, the same access. If there's a student that requires extended time or alternate location, those are things that happen all day, every day, regardless of labels.
Okay.
Yeah, great question, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Next up, Connor, business report, please.
Thank you. A few items on my list. I'll save a couple of them for the Board of Education or the committee update for ABF. But as Eric said, January 1st is when the governor's budget is due. Just as every year, we're 10 days in and no budget yet, but that's totally typical. We expect within the next week or maybe 2. We have an ABF meeting scheduled on the 30th. Yep. Where we'll dissect that. Basically, the biggest things that we're going to be looking for is if they continue UBK aid, as well as what our foundation aid looks like. Most other aid items on the runs are all expense-based, so we've already had those projected, whether that's capital project work, high excess cost aid for students of high cost that we give a kickback from the state, BOCES aid, construction materials aid for textbooks, things like that. That can all be projected. We don't know what they'll give us for foundation aid or if UBK funding will continue. So those are things that we basically have our eye on or are waiting for. So once that happens, I'll send it out to the board so they can take a look at it as well. But ADF will be the first one to kind of jump into that and see what we're going to do and how much we've got. Budget conversations. So prior to break, Greg, myself, and Eric had a bunch of meetings scheduled with admin, and as Eric alluded to, there's, let's say, some people absent just due to the flu, due to sickness and stuff like that. So we've only got a couple of them in so far. We have next Tuesday and Wednesday scheduled with everybody else to get those done. So we've met with a few people, a few principals on their needs for next year, class sizes, section size, any new needs, any needs that might be going away and shifting up to a different grade, any of those big ticket items that the board will need to know and act upon, and whether it's a hire, a shift of an employee, those kind of things. But by next week, we'll have a good idea of where the needs are throughout the district. We obviously have a good idea, but any of those hidden items that administrators might want to add to their buildings. Eric asked me to just talk about the budget calendar, so I attached that to the agenda as well.
Is that in the public version?
Yeah.
Folks to see, okay.
Yep. So upcoming for January, like I said, we'll review those state aid runs when we get those. Audit budget and finance meeting on the 30th, and we'll follow up meetings with the budget builders or administrators throughout the district on their needs. And come February, we'll have a meeting on the 7th. There'll be an in-depth look at our 3-part budget. At the previous meeting, I gave a list of things that are impacts in those areas of the budget, and then we'll add to those and supplement anything that administrators might be saying differently that have changed over the past 2 months. So there'll be a slight presentation, a quick presentation on that for the 3-part budget. Save tax cap for committee stuff. And then our budget workshops that we've had the past 3 years are tentatively scheduled for the 8th and the 15th of February. So that's basically just a kind of an open door where we sit down and go through a presentation for anybody who wants to join, ask questions, and go through where we're at, what we're funding, kind of just our initiatives, challenges in the budget process. Just kind of an open-ended kind of thing that Eric and I do. And Greg, with the coffee conversations that we've had on Wednesday, it's kind of just an open door, but just open conversation where we are in the budget process.
And those are here?
Those will be in the district office.
And what time on those 2 days? Are we hitting 2 different times?
They're usually at night, so shouldn't be restricted with children and work.
Try to give people the opportunity to drive back to work. It seems to be where we get the most people.
And just the dates are scheduled, we haven't had the time, so if we could do one at night and then one right after school, or
That's definitely a terrible time. It's a lot of Uber driving back and forth to all the places.
Last year we did a couple in the evenings, we did a couple early mornings. We caught some of the Waterman State Street AM traffic, people popped in, so.
maybe that's not the right time.
Maybe just not
Open
everyone.
to the question.
Thank you. Sorry, sometimes I talk and my mouth is open and I don't mean it to be.
No problem. And let's save that for the update. Okay, next thing I had was just to keep on the radar, as we do every year, our bus resolution will be on the agenda next meeting. That's just the adoption of the amount of money that we want to spend for new buses for the coming year. 5 years ago, we implemented a 5-year bus replacement plan, which is phenomenal. phenomenally well, especially with maintenance wise. But like I said last meeting, last year our authorization was for $501,000. I got the quotes, and this year will be for about $623,000. So significant increases, like I said last time, it's between 25 and 30%. But that's all across the board. Maybe not that high, but definitely in the bus industry. So.
Can I just ask you one question, or just a clarification before you go on? For the bus proposition, the numbers that you suggest to us to put on a bus proposition are based on actual quotes. So it's not really what we want to spend on a bus, it's what we're told the cost of a bus is. And there's, based on the quotes that we get. So
we have behind quotes for every set number I've been sent. So we did this in December, so we've had a pretty much towards the front of the line. And just to mention this, we haven't even received our buses that we ordered last year. So we're still 5 months behind, and but that's just kind of the way of land right now. But
I just wanted to make that distinction, that it's not it's not like we're choosing between, do you want to buy
no, these are actual quotes.
a Kia or a Ferrari. We are told how much it costs, and that's how much we have to put on.
These are the standard yellow buses that you see all around. And the only added thing that we did for these buses, and these buses aren't handicap accessible, they don't have storage compartments. These are basically 71 capacity, basically as cheap as you can get, to be honest. But the only thing we did add that is nice, that became part of the base bid, was illuminated school bus signs. So as you're driving, they're kind of dim. They've made this, you can't really see them from a distance. They made, New York Bus Sales has made this part of their base model, for lack of a better term, for the school bus signs. And the one thing that we did add was illuminated stop signs that come out on the side. So you can see those from a lot farther, not just with some little red light shining on it to try to illuminate it, but it's very bright. You can see it from a long time and should deter people from going past those buses.
Just on the bus thing, I get a call once in a while about electric buses. If you remember from the New York State School Boards Conference, there was a bus vendor there. As far as our research goes, is that it certainly seems like this is the way things are going to go. But there is an astronomical upfront cost, infrastructure cost. The battery technology is very cold susceptible. And then Connor actually made a great point today too, is when you think of how our buses are used with AM runs, multiple AM runs, shelling kids to and from sports, I think we're still a few years away from this being a real viable option for schools, just because the recharge time of using those buses multiple times a day and how that will work just doesn't seem like it's totally there yet. But as this evolves, we'll keep the board up to date, and if there's such a time that it looks like it'd be a good investment, we'll make sure it's on your radar.
There's no mandate taking place, is there?
Yes,
There is,
So yeah.
But the buses can't charge if it's under 40, so that doesn't.
Right now, it's
work
it's
with
sort of
mandate.
fiction, it's science fiction.
Yeah.
But I guess the idea was to
Get it going.
put a line in the sand so that everybody headed in that direction.
There's a multitude of questions that we've asked at conferences and workshops, and very little answers, let's just say.
You know, the facilities to charge them, the technicians, the technical skills to even work on and repair them. I mean, it's like, it goes on and on and on.
But
Something new.
the dates, just for information, is 2027. You have to purchase zero emission electric buses. Then by 2035, your whole fleet has to be zero emission. So you can still continue to drive buses, diesel, gas buses until 2035, but your whole fleet's got to turn over at that time. But our intent, once we get answers, is to phase this in and do our bus replacement plan as we've done in the past. But like I said, lots of questions and little answers.
Yeah, well, they're not good answers right now. The cold susceptibility was the huge one for us right now. It's how many days in the calendar year since we work is it 40 or what?
Lately, not enough, but, yeah. Sorry, Connor, you can get back on track. I didn't mean to start
Nope, totally
the ground
fine.
there.
That was my last one, and I'll save the other stuff I have for the ABF committee.
I have, any questions, board members for Connor?
Yeah, kind of just a quick, I forwarded to you, but the members of the Skills Training Department would be looking for that tax exemption. December 9th, Governor Hochul passed a law allowing firefighters, volunteer firefighters to get a tax exemption regarding their property taxes. So you'll be getting letters from the department and the corporation shortly, just to make you advised of that.
Yep, and I'm assuming this is kind of the same thing as the veteran tax exemption that got passed and was talked about a few years back. So I'm sure that's something that has to be adopted by the board. So it's definitely going to be further conversations than just my opinions or thoughts. So.
Any other questions, board members? I have a question, but Connor, you can maybe weave this into your ABF update when we get to that. You can decide, just so that people understand how ABF works with regards to the tax suggestion that they make to the board. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to do that in a committee update?
Tax caps on my committee updates.
Okay, so just how we kind of like hash it out there to come up with some suggestions.
Yep.
If you wouldn't mind adding that. Okay, so we'll move on. I'm up next for a board update. I've got a couple of things. Fellow board members had sent you guys a note about possibly doing a retreat. I would like to maybe do that the third week, which is kind of the last week of the month. We can take it offline, just email some days that work for you. We could do it for an evening. It's just a chance for us to get together without a formal meeting. So I mean, it's not to discuss business of the board. It is to discuss how the board operates, and how we want, maybe some goals that we have as a board for the second half of the year. So if I could get some feedback from everyone by the end, today's Tuesday, by Thursday, just a couple of days that work for you, and we'll work around that. Okay. Next up, I just want to point out, as we're in the second half of the school year, I just want to remind everybody, from a parent and student perspective, that as a board and as a district, we operate under the chain of command. So if you have an issue with a teacher, whether it's a grade or an assignment or whatever it is, your first stop is to go to the teacher. If you are not getting the answer, I don't want to say if you're not getting the answer you want, but if your question is not being answered or you're still left confused, then the next step would be to go to the principal. If you are still running into a roadblock, at that point you would bring it to the superintendent, and then after that, if you still have some unresolved issues, you would bring it up to the board level. But if a board member is ever approached by a parent or even by a student, if you guys have a problem with something, we are always going to go back to the chain of command. It's something we sort of always talk about, and we formalized it in the governance doc that we adopted last month, but just as we're starting the second half of the school year, it's just a good chance to remind everyone that kind of work your way through the system, because the chances are the people that you have the question with or about are the best person to answer it and can probably clear up a lot of confusion. So start there. So that was same with that.
I was just going to say.
Athletics, academics, theater, clubs, anything. Go to the advisor, go to the coach, go to the teacher. If you are not getting resolution, then bring it up a level. So just anywhere in the district, always start with your direct contact on that particular item, and then take it up from there. Another thing I would like the board to just consider, you don't have to have resolution on this. We spend time, we have people help us, we record the board meetings and we post them online. It's something that started during COVID. Nobody watches them because they can see who went back and pulled the stream down and watched it, and we get about one watcher a meeting. So the point of having a public meeting is for people to be here and participate, and we thought, oh, if we record them, people will remain engaged and continue to watch them, because that's the feedback that we got. And there must be better series on Netflix because they don't appear to be watching either. So the board as a whole should probably just think about, do we want to continue recording them for the next school year, phase it out at the end of this 22-23 calendar year. I'm putting it on your radar. It's not a decision that has to be made by the board now, but is it worth the effort and the resources to do this? Because someone's still got to upload it as well as that if nobody is going back and recording it. Our meeting minutes are always posted online, so people can go back and read meeting minutes. And people can always come and join us in person. We would love the company. We are here the first Tuesday of the month, every single month, sometimes twice a month, So there are opportunities to certainly be here and see what we're doing. So putting that on the radar. The last thing on my list is, as you notice, there are 6 of us up here. The full board is 7 individuals. We did have a board member resign at our last board meeting. Their term was set to run out at the end of this election cycle, or this board cycle. So I just want to lay out to the board what some next steps would be so that you guys can think about it, because it is a board decision. The board has a couple of options, and this came from our council. I did email them just to make sure I understood kind of how this works. And this is laid out by NISBA, which is the School Board Association, New York School Board Association. We can hold a vote, hold a public election. There are requirements around that in terms of the time from now that you can post the election. There's a waiting period because you have to post it and put up notifications. There is also significant cost to hosting an election. There's also a lot of manpower required. The other option that the board has is to appoint someone to fill out the remainder of the term, which in this particular case would be until election night.
Till June 30th.
Not for that seat, I don't believe. I can double check on that, but for this one, because it was someone that left, it would be till, it's either potentially till May 17th or whatever the date is, or till June, but we're pretty sure it's election
Probably
night.
would be that next board meeting, but we might talk about the same thing.
So, those are the 2 options that the board has, so I'd ask you all to kind of consider that and decide what you'd like to do. And we'll talk about it publicly, but the board decides. It's a board decision on how to handle that seat. If anybody has any immediate thoughts or opinions, please feel free to let us know.
I can jump on both that you brought up just for discussion purposes. I would be in favor of continuing to videotape our meetings through the end of this year, and then looking at stopping that for the following year. Even just considering the time and the resources, that it's always a trade-off, right? Like somebody's posting that video, they're taking the time to do that, and their time, in my opinion, could be spent elsewhere. And as far as our vacant board seat, I would propose to the board, would anyone be interested in considering going back to a previous board member and looking at such a short time to fill, and yet it's a very important time as we come upon our budget season, that we go back to someone who kind of knows already how the board runs, what people's thoughts are on that.
I will say, in my opinion, for me, I can eliminate the election. It just seems silly by the time our meeting's over tonight. If we decided to go that route at the next meeting, we've got to get signatures, people have to decide, they have to campaign. I mean, I feel like it would be right around our regular.
Timing-wise, it would end up being an April election.
Exactly, so that to me is just silly to even entertain that, but that's just me. I like the idea of a former board member as well. There's no onboarding, they have some background information already.
Right.
So, and it's a short period of time.
I would just concur with Seth. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the election won't be feasible. Researching back to some of our former board members, if they're interested in joining us for a short period of time, it might be a viable option.
Gary, thoughts?
It's all good stuff to consider.
Okay. Let's,
Do we have to make a decision this evening?
we don't.
We just consider it.
So how about, can we commit to making a decision in February? It sounds like everybody's leaning one way, but just kind of go home and mull it over, and whatever you're comfortable with, we will decide as a board at the next meeting, and then we'll go from there and try to act as swiftly as possible. Because it will be the fun time of year, my most favorite time of the year. Connor's Christmas season is coming up. Is there anything else? There is one other thing, not too heavy business. I will make sure board members get it. There is a COSA dinner in February for board members. There's a whole bunch of topics, actually a lot of them pretty timely. Mental health, student engagement, community engagement, declining enrollment. It is at BOCES in Auburn on February 2nd. It's a Thursday. So if anybody would like to go to that, you are welcome as board members to go and represent the district. So think that over. And then I would say get back to Amy. I just signed her up for that, but is that okay? Get back to Amy. Get back to Amy. All right. Anything else from board members? Okay, we are going to move on. Get my glasses on.
The question is, what is Amy Kim, K-I-M-M?
2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got the committee update. Amanda's going to give a curriculum update, and we've got an EBF update. Do you want to go first, Amanda? And then Connors, because this is probably beefier,
Okay.
heavier content.
So we again had our curriculum committee meeting tonight at 5 o'clock, in which we had 0 public attendance. So we started these whole committees because there was a large public outcry for time that people could come in, see what we're doing, ask questions, we can highlight all of the great work that is happening. And this is the 4th one in a row that there's been less than 5 people at. This particular one, nobody. And the amount of time that Francine spent putting together a presentation, videotaping students, sharing their feedback on their literacy and social studies classes in the middle school and high school is just a huge amount of time. And it's just really disheartening to see that, you know, we continue to hold these meetings and take Brian and Francine's time, and often teachers come to present. So I guess my committee update is the presentation was amazing, really highlighting the different pathways that the students have at the high school and the different classwork, but we have to look at what we need to do differently, because it's a waste of our resources right now. And like to the public, if you want these to continue, you got to start to show up, or otherwise I'm of the opinion we have to scale back, because it is a huge amount of time that they put in that they could be putting those resources elsewhere.
One of the great things about the committees as opposed to board meetings, at board meetings we typically don't respond.
Right.
There's no dialogue, there's no conversation. At the committees, people have unfettered access to us, ask us anything, we can sit, we can talk. If you have questions, hold
Much more
strings.
informal.
Yeah, it just allows for that conversation that the board meetings don't. And that was, you know, the intention of doing them. The ABF committee, though we have low attendance, it's consistent and it's always the same folks. It's a good example of, hey, let's talk through a problem together. And that's what we would like to get to with the other committees as well. But curriculum in particular has had a pretty low turnout.
So I guess, I mean, my first go-to, we were talking, like, what could we do to advertise it differently? If it is really focusing on, you know, a Waterman topic, do we need just Pat Brown to be hitting the Mayor Square repeatedly? Or, is the weekly update enough? It doesn't seem to be enough. Or did this come about at a time of, you know, coming on the heels of COVID, and people were very concerned about academics, and now we seem to be at a pretty good place, and we don't need to continue to do this. But I don't know what everyone's thoughts are. It came out of that, you know, developing the strat plan and giving the community an opportunity.
I mean, they asked for this, and I'll say even I came to, the last one was science, and the State Street science teachers brought in little sample vials for us, and plant life, and light boxes, and I mean, there was a lot of effort to put in to show what they are teaching and how, explaining why they're teaching that, and why do we make the kids look at the purple leaf and the green leaf and see what's different and all that. So there's some really great content there.
Well, it's informative, and I think what's frustrating for me is, we only seem to hear from people when there's a problem. I would love to hear from people in a more proactive, when things are positive, and not just when there's a disagreement.
So I guess, Amanda,
I mean, to go one step further than that, but like, yeah, I want to hear when it's good, but at the same time, we have a curriculum coordinator who's spending hours creating a presentation.
And not for a committee
Right.
that the board asked for. The board asked for the curriculum committee because the community asked us to bring back, there was a lot of feedback that there had been a curriculum committee years ago and it needs to come back so we have some insight on the path that the kids are learning, the progression of the learning, and we want to hear it, and we want to hear from these coordinators that you have. So that's why the board tasked Eric and his team to reinstate this committee, but nobody comes. So,
You know, and I fly by the motto of I don't have to win, I like to be heard, and that's your opportunity to be heard. You might not come and change, you know, the wax museum or something, but it's nice to, you know, like what Kim said, that this is how she feels. And, you know, we learn from other people too. And although you may not change an outcome necessarily in the curriculum, you know, it still has an impact, your words and what you say, so. And it's informative, it's pretty cool to see what these kids are learning these days.
and I also think it gives you more context to if you're depending on your child, especially if you have a 13-year-old boy, to tell you what they learned at school. I don't know, there's a plant, I looked at a plant today. I mean, that's kind of the context. And then when you come and you can get actual long narrative about it and why we're talking about this and then why they had to write the paper and then what the end result is and how it actually incorporates 6 different subjects into one, it helps you understand a little bit more. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. We just have to figure out if we're going to continue it, there has to be some participation from the parents. And if not, then we have to consider discontinuing because it's not fair to the staff that stays, that puts all the time in.
And I mean, you could also argue it's also not fair to the students who might need that time from the staff that could be putting that time in otherwise. So I guess I'm looking for like some feedback from the board, and I feel like Brian and Francine are as well, of at what point do we kind of say, let's pull back? Do we give it 1 more meeting and see what attendance is? Do we give it 2 more and see what attendance is? But at some point, when do we say, put your time elsewhere?
You know, some of these things are like, sorry, Gary, some of these things are time oriented too. We have certain programs that we want to highlight certain times during the year. Another piece of our strategic plan was, you know, to highlight CTE and OC's programs. If you remember our board presentation last year where our CTE students came and presented, that was so memorable, and it was like, wow, I had no idea that these kids got to do all this amazing stuff. We're intentionally putting these things in certain times of the year to drum up awareness and things like that, but it doesn't help if nobody shows.
Should I say, I mean, to the public, right, our big viewership,
Please come.
you need to come, or communicate why you can't come.
Right, because
Like,
it's not that we're getting feedback saying, I can't do it. There's
There's just
no,
nothing. So like, is it the time? Is it the location? Is it the date? Like, something, if you want this to continue, share with us, what could we be doing differently? How could we advertise it differently? Share the topic differently? We need some kind of feedback.
So maybe we need to flip it, because we are driving the content, as opposed to the community that reached out initially. They have specific interests, presumably. Maybe we have a vehicle that could elicit what are the things you are interested in hearing about, as opposed to just driving the core programs, right? So last session was an excellent session for me because of all the tech that was involved. But I simply showed up to an agenda that was already set. Subject matter that's already scripted, that's set out throughout the school year, as opposed to what is the community interested in. So I think we need to flip it to see what if we can figure out if we could design a vehicle, if we could have a survey or reach out at touch points, then people would indicate what they're interested in, and then we customize the different groups and presentations to suit that. Otherwise we get what we have right now.
so how about this as a proposed bridge of that? Let's send out a survey with, we can't do a broad survey, we get 10,000 ideas, with 5 potential subjects, we've got to keep some narrow focus, for the next curriculum committee. Largest vote, but 98% of people say we want to talk about math. We're going to hold the next curriculum committee on math. We're going to remind them that they picked math, and so that's what we're having, and we'll see who comes. Is that fair? Because if we say, just tell us what you'd like to talk about, it's going to be too broad, and I don't know that, I think part of that is we have to educate people on what the topic of curriculum is. It is not, it is a broad, so it is the reading program, it is the math program, and it might be specific to a elementary or high school, but we have to do some education.
Right. However we go about it once we flip it around.
Let's see what our
Let's see what people
and if they still pick a topic and still don't come to the topic they picked, then we know that maybe we have to take a nap on this. So hold on one second. Can my neighbor raise a hand? This is the weird part about board meetings. Our board meetings are public gets to watch, but but you can come in at the end during the second public comment. Okay, so save it to the end. Sorry, just because it's a matter of operational rules. Sorry.
Okay. We have established PTCs, I know. I doubt they're hugely well attended, but I'm assuming they're attended.
No.
They're no jokes?
Good thought, Tim, but no. Nobody goes to them.
Nobody goes, I know 9 or 4 people. It's a half dozen.
The president, the vice president, and me.
And the principal.
That's it.
Yeah, no.
That's all the way down?
Good thought, Tim. Good thought.
Okay.
But I tell you what, the day you stop having them,
I know.
you will have removed the option.
Yeah.
No, I'm speaking about the PTC side, right?
Right.
With respect to the different committees and all of that, I think apart from seeing what the committee at large is interested in, we also have to moderate our expectations. We will never have a full room. Well, I'm betting there are a couple of topics that may completely fill a room, right? But we may moderate. Where 5 is probably acceptable. Because if you add 5 up in one meeting and 7 in another, we're meeting some objective.
Right.
0 is not acceptable.
My point was not, what I was going to
Yeah, we
suggest
could
was we pick their
piggyback.
brains and pick their brains and go, this is some people to show up, that's all, just using the vehicle.
No.
People out.
Well, actually, Tim, no, that's a good idea because that might be another vehicle to reach out.
It might help them with their
PTC
membership.
network. Hey, we're having a curriculum meeting coming up. Or we have a schedule of them. What are some of the hot topics? What are some of the things you guys, who's comfortable with how your kids are assessed? Who's comfortable with this? That may be another vehicle to reach out more specifically by grade, by school.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Something to consider.
One creative idea I heard, it's a little disingenuous, and we can't do it because of that, but was to attach it to an elementary concert. Because you have a captive audience. It's like the first hour of our elementary concert.
In between the recorders and the chorus. Okay, so we got some work to do on that. Let's see what we can do for the next one to try to flip it a little bit, but with some guardrails.
Yep.
And see if we can get some folks to come and, I mean, if we can get 3 people, I would 3 would be awesome.
300% improvement on today.
3.
That's fine, like, we don't have to have a room full of people, but like you said, 0 is
You guys will score some major points if you show up for the next curriculum committee meeting.
I hate to say spring is the worst, so like if we can do it shortly,
The only thing I'll say about spring is the worst, fall is the worst, game tournament season is the worst, oh, it's the holidays, it's the worst, oh, it's almost near school vacation and we like to leave a week early, it's the worst. It's always the worst all the time because everybody's busy. But if it's a priority for a parent, then it's a priority and you make time for things you want to make time for.
Right. A win for us is having the option and the opportunity for people to be engaged.
Well, and that's genuinely what we want, is to sit and have that opportunity to have conversations with people. So, hey, why are
we're
you
not
teaching
doing it
this?
to check a box.
How do you make this decision? Come and hear from the people that are involved in it, and hear how thoughtful and how caring and how deliberate and detail-oriented those decisions are.
Okay, thank you for that, Amanda. Good discussion, team. We'll do some work on that. Connor, you are up next with the fun stuff.
Yeah, mine's not as beefy as it may.
Right, so you thought mine was PPC, I was all hot on the
This is for ABF.
For audit, budget, and finance. Some conflicting schedules happened, so we didn't actually meet. I sent out some materials. I don't know if any one of you guys want to give an update, or I can just go through some of the materials.
All of you.
Okay. So basically, some of the things on the agenda, one of the biggest things was what to do with our excess fund balance, our plan on that, our fund balance management plan. So what we've done is solicit input from administrators, teachers, leaders in the district on if you have this pot of money, what do you think we can spend it on, kind of wish list items or important items. So what they did was gave me a big list of items. I prioritized that items into specific categories, whether it was safety and security, operations, athletics, construction items that we could do, to peel back out of scope to do with this one-time money, and a couple other items. So what the ABS committee initially will be, but the board's decision finally will be to prioritize these items, to say, what do we want to chip down on this money, and what do we want to do this, spend this money on for one-time expenses. And the ABF has talked about, again, what do we want to spend this money on, but not reoccurring expenses like 5 more teachers, after that, that's just going to dwindle down and we have to fire 5 more teachers. But these one-time expenses that we might have holes in security or cameras or door access or fencing around the district or just a slew of things that these administrators have come up with. What the board will have to do is prioritize these items to say, what do we want to build into the budget for this coming year? So how that will be offset, we'll have the expenses, we'll have quotes for these items, and that will be offset by pulling from this pot of excess fund balance as appropriated fund balance. So that will basically be a wash, no effect to the budget. But the biggest thing will be to have you guys get this list in your hands and prioritize these items to say, that's definitely what I want, not even a question, or let's put it in the wish list item and see where we're at in a couple of years. But that's basically one of the biggest items because it will have to be built into the budget, so there will be some conversations that need to be had. And I also shared Questar 3, who's a regional company that works with all school districts, did a survey for excess fund balance throughout the state. I shared this with the ABF and I can share it with the rest of the board and the community, but every region in New York State is over 4%, and ranging from anywhere from 5% up to 13%. So we were at 13.8%, so we're at the higher end, absolutely, but definitely not a terrible place to be. But again, we have to prioritize how we spend that money and how we manage this fund balance. But like I said before, it's across the board with the influx of federal funding, with the claim to cut 20% state aid and then giving us the full and then some. So everybody's in the same position. The comptroller will probably turn an eye to a point because we're all in the same point, at the same place. But like Gary said a couple meetings ago, just getting a plan into place so we have something in writing like our corrective action plan says. Any questions on the excess fund balance? That was one of the bigger topics.
So just to reiterate, Connor, we are doing this and we'll be doing these one-time expenditures because we have to. Because
have to is a tough word.
Well, so to simplify it for people that don't live in school budget worlds, we're so great at saving money and putting money aside, but the state only allows us to have so much in our savings account. And we have, who knew this would be terrible, we have too much money in our savings account. And in order to correct that with the state and the controller's office, we have to spend some of that money down because they don't like schools. And a lot of schools are in the same position because of COVID and have higher balances. But we've got too much money in the savings account, so we are required to do a spend down.
Correct.
Correct.
To be compliant with the allotted amount, which is percentage based of money that we're allowed to maintain in our savings account.
The 4% percentage amount, and that's been, Eric might be able to say better than me, but I would say 20 years. It's long overdue to say that that's enough money.
Right. And despite any potential economic issues that might be coming in the next year or two, or budget cuts that the state might put out, they will not let us maintain that higher than allotted savings amount for that rainy day.
Correct.
They still want us to spend the money, even though we're trying to be responsible and save it.
That's correct.
Okay, just making sure I'm putting it in the layman's terms.
So can I ask does it have to be on like items? And the reason why this might be like a really good question, but you mentioned that the governor mentioned school lunches, free school lunches. We don't know whether that's gonna happen or not. Could that potentially spend where we could say for the next year, regardless of what the governor says, we could offer free school lunches here? Or does it have to be on like an item?
No, it could just be, so each year we do an unappropriated fund balance, which is around 2% of what our tax levy is, which is basically normal throughout the state. You put something there to balance the budget in case, so you could have some contingencies in the budget. But we could absolutely do a pot, say $100,000 to offset school lunch costs, for sure. If that's something the board would want to do, but that would just be a projection. And
right, yeah.
obviously it wouldn't have to be an exact amount, but that is definitely an option.
I do want you guys to watch the film tonight, because you both use your hands.
I do. Do we have to buy it?
Back and forth.
We can increase our viewership.
200%.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Any other questions on excess fund balance? Just one of my other items, I did a preliminary tax cap calculation. Just for those that's layman term, it's a long calculation that determined by the state what you can raise your taxes at to have a simple majority vote to approve your vote. What is a simple majority? It's just 1 more than 50%. If we were to exceed that amount, we would have to get 60%. So that amount right now, tentatively, is just over 2 at 2.09%. A couple of these things that we're waiting on is the tax-based growth factor, which the the state pushes out. Basically, is the growth in this area. Last year it was just under 1%, so we'll know that amount. And the other amount, which I'm sure we already know this number, was the allowable growth factor, which is based off CPI or inflation. And it's a maximum of 2. It can be up to a maximum of 2, so if inflation was only 1%, it would be 1%. But if it's 7%, we're maxed out at 2%. So I think we know that it will be 2%, just based off everything. So basically the only number we're waiting on is the tax-based growth factor, and this state aid runs from the governor to ensure our projections. So 2.09 tentatively right now, and if that's done, I can shoot that, finish that and shoot that out to the board. And then at ABF, we basically have different scenarios that what we would do with different tax increases. So obviously, for example, 2.09% is just about $570,000. So if we were to, what would we do with that $570,000? Additional mental health, additional intervention stuff, and then lay out these different scenarios for the board to make a decision on where we want to go. So if that answers your question, Danielle. I think that was it.
Any additional questions for Connor? Okay.
Nothing for Connor, but just real quick before we move on around policy, which is the new readings coming up. But if the board has anything that they want the policy committee to take a look at, right now we don't have anything on our plate. So please reach out and let Danielle know so that we can look into it.
One of the things that's on our radar, we addressed it earlier, was the state law changes with marijuana legalization and access and things like that. We're not sure what else is going to be impacted by that yet, but that's something we have our eye on.
As I said before, at the previous meeting, there's a 31 OCs who we do our policies from.
not budget related, but it is with respect to the findings of the last audit and how we doing anything different with respect to managing cash? Cash receipts, yeah. Are we doing anything
Talking
different?
about the club accounts?
Yeah.
Not the school cash.
Correct.
It's just the cost, just the cost.
Hopefully we're in good shape.
We're scheduling it with the auditors come in, I think, in February
To do their,
formal training.
their training, okay.
Better ways to do and prioritize and profit and loss type thing, so it's not just cash receipts, it's more the whole gamut.
Right, just
Yeah,
some
But that is on
With
the
the club
calendar.
advisors.
just trying to figure out schedules. yeah.
Rose from St. Lawrence going to come and do that with our club advisors and the kids.
right.
Yeah.
Is this the first time you're doing it?
That's the first time they're doing it. Steve and I in previous years have given presentations to club advisors and
So it's been
students. Yeah, so we've done that on a yearly basis. We've told them the findings of the audit. You can require it, but whoever walks through the door isn't really, up to us, I guess, but we've held trainings previously, so it's not like we don't do it, but we're doing it harder this time.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Okay, we set to move on to new business. Okay, I'm going to group A, B, and C together, which is personnel retirement resignation leaves, personnel probationary, provisional, permanent appointments, and personnel report substitute and temporary appointments. I'll read everything through and then I'll get a motion and then we can ask any questions at that time. So under personnel retirement resignation leaves, we have the retirement of Lori, I always want to call her Elaine, but it's Milne. Retirement of Sue Welch, resignation of Julie Corbett, resignation of Dwight Lewis, and unpaid leave of absence for Jordan Bruna. Under appointments, probationary, provisional, and permanent, we have the appointment of Ms. Melissa Polino for physical therapist, probationary appointment of Audra Schweska, teaching assistant, job rate for Larry Hilmer, a job rate for Rebecca Sweet, and then under substitute and temporary appointments, we have a nice long list. Allison Odell as substitute teacher, Suzanne Selvage as substitute teacher, Nicole Scott as substitute teacher, Christopher Lupo as substitute teacher, and these are all substitute teacher and substitute teacher assistant. Sorry. Hannah Flowers as substitute teacher and teacher assistant, Grace Cush as substitute teacher and substitute teacher assistant, Thomas Nolan, substitute teacher assistant, Kirsten Dan, substitute teacher assistant, Dwight Lewis as substitute teacher and substitute teacher assistant, and substitute groundskeeper. So, I think I caught everybody's names. Can I get a motion on A, B, and C together? So moved. First by Carrie, second by Amanda. Questions or comments from anyone on the board?
Just with our substitute teachers, those that are recent graduates, again, we've asked before, having a lower grade levels.
Yeah, we talk about that often, and even so far as that.
Some in college, not even just recent
Yeah.
graduates.
Yeah.
So
A lot of us get your name all over it.
when and if we are required out of need and necessity, Greg and his team have sort of highlighted the people that would be more appropriate for that than just putting anybody in high school. But for the most part, if they're young college students or recent graduates, they're typically in the elementary levels.
Yes.
I'd also like to just note that of the folks retiring, congratulations to them on
Yes.
their years of service for the district. We've got 2 retirements on the list, so thank you, Lori and Sue Welch. Also, Eric, I would ask you to speak to the appointment of Melissa Polino for the physical therapist and just kind of explain how that.
Yeah, so for the last several years, we've contracted through a company called Lifespan. I think that's their name now. It's changed.
Just Tuesday, so I don't know what.
Yeah, it might have changed already. But they've had a number of different names that they've operated under. Basically, we've used them to contract services for physical therapy for the district. Melissa Polino's done an awesome job for us for the last couple of years.
She was the employee of the third party, so it's same person.
We inquired with them a while ago about taking her on full-time so that she would be our employee and not their consultant. And then there was, agreements with the company and financial agreements that it was like non-compete type situations and buyout type situations, and all of that pretty much expires to the point where she can come on board as a city analyst employee now.
And as a physical therapist, she's working directly with students in the district.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe I had like 2 or 3 meetings ago, I said this might be on the radar.
Yeah.
So this is, yeah.
And there was inquiry from the board members as to whether this would be, I mean, will it keep her busy? And can you see it in the future keeping her busy? And it was a resounding, I mean, from UPK to BOCES, even possibly getting reimbursement from
From CPSC
BOCES.
kids,
Right.
UPK kids to our BOCES programs that are housed. We even billable hours to other districts that send their students to us for the BOCES programs that we operate at middle school and high school. And that was the concern, was, will there be enough work to sustain this individual? And Jen Whipple coordinates all of that. It was a resounding yes.
So just to clarify, this is not technically in addition to staff. It's just a shifting of, we're paying her ourselves versus a third party.
Correct. She'll be our employee versus a consultant on lifetime.
Okay.
So we previously had, the OT and PT were previously district employees, and they switched at some point.
Then somebody retired, right?
Colleen Shaver used to be shared with Onondaga, so she was technically only half-time here. And then she retired. We ended that contract with them and contracted with Lifespan now. So not only, like Eric said, she our employee now, so she's ours. She will have a full plate. And on record, I'll say there will be savings to what we've been paying for her services. So,
Great.
yes.
Great.
That was my question.
Yes.
In terms of,
Significant.
okay, good, excellent.
Which we won't talk about. That's a financial matter, so we don't discuss pay employees. Just if you're wondering why we're not going into that level of detail. Is everyone in favor of A, B, and C and all of the names mentioned? I'd like to take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those all passed. We're going to move on to item D, which is going to group D and E together, and we've seen these on the past 2 agendas. D is the CSE MOA. The board approves the attached MOA for the civil service employee, which is Lori Mill, and the CSE MOU, which the board approves the MOU for the civil service employee. We have those attached in our board packet. This is, well, let me get some, then we can talk about it. Can I get a motion on these 2? Second. First Carrie, second Amanda. Just to provide some context, this is the agreement similar to the teachers that they are allowed to continue working when they retire, this new retirement incentive. That's why we have to do an MOA on that. So, any questions on this?
I'll just note in E, and it's just, I think, a typo. It says MOA in the recommended action.
Yeah, instead of MOU. So, fix that in the notes. Yep.
Thanks, Amanda.
All those in favor of C and D, or I'm sorry, D and E? Please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, let's go on to item F. Item F is going to stand alone. F is the approval of bid awards for 23-24 capital project. Be it resolved, the board approves the following bids related to the project, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attachments included in our board packet. It's basically identifying those firms and individuals that have been chosen for the work. Can I get a motion on F?
So moved.
First Tim, second Dan. Any discussion? We have 2 guests in the back that are here. If we have any pressing questions, our friends from Turner Construction are here. They're waiting with bated breath to answer all of my questions. Anybody have any questions for them? Okay, I'll go. Sure. All right. What kind of COVID? We're not in COVID anymore. What kind of delays do you anticipate in this new world that we live in?
Their materials are being delivered on our new buses.
Supply chain type stuff.
Yeah, do you anticipate any problems?
Well, as a whole, we track it nationwide, supply chain, and even locally we're tracking. So HVAC equipment in particular has seen long lead times. Recently we see lockers, a lot of things with metal. Currently we're seeing anything that's got chips in it, electronic chips, so generators, which we have one going at the bus garage for this project. So things like that we're taking into account the lead times. Is there anything else I'm not thinking of that stands out?
Just the answer is I don't know what I don't know. I mean, unfortunately. What we've seen a lot of is just COVID depleted a lot of stuff that was normally shelved and stocked in regular, and has turned a lot of stuff into on-demand type ordering, and that just seems to be the world that we're living in now. So, you know, stuff we just had to factor that in across the board in terms of just planning that ahead and making sure that we got the submittal in and approved and that stuff has actually been secured and ordered. So.
Are you guys seeing the labor availability change?
Yeah.
Things that we saw.
Yeah, no, I mean, the labor's that can pretty much be kind of a continuous issue. Seem to be having a climate right now where there's a lot of folks looking for work to try and kind of fill the plate again, which is a good thing. But yeah, the labor is definitely kind of been a continuum.
I see.
So here's a question, and I don't know if this is the appropriate form for this, and so I don't want to, if it's not, you can just shut me down. But if you, and I know there's a lot of supply chain things that are out of your control, but if you know, for example, that you need to order HVAC stuff today so that it's here in 97 months, and let's say whatever vendor is responsible for that forgets to do it, and so we are delayed even further as a result of someone's forgetfulness. And because of that, we have to have an extra generator running part of our building because we don't have the right HVAC equipment. Does the financial burden of that workaround that we've got to resolve as a district, if it would impede us getting open in time for the fall or whatever it is, does that fall on you guys? Does that fall on us? Does it fall on the individual contractor? And this isn't specific to this project. This is just a general question I'm asking just because and I know there are some things that are totally out of your control. But if it's a clear error in planning that causes us financial pain.
I can jump in a little here because we've had some really uncomfortable conversations with some of our vendors where I've been tagged in on these things. When the supply chain issues initially started to become a real big problem, we had some gameplay with ordering, whereas when the prices jumped, people waited thinking that the prices would fall back down, and then they didn't. And then they didn't order our items, and then when those bills came across Connor's desk, and they were astronomically more than we agreed to, and they were asking for increased pay, we very quickly reminded them of the dates and the times when these orders were supposed to have been placed. So Turner's done a great job of crawling all over that when we've seen it. That's just one example. I don't know.
Yeah. So is that your job in general to any of our capital projects that you're involved in? To monitor those vendors to make sure they're keeping on track as best they can?
I mean, the proactive approach is always the best, right? And I always, is it ordered? Is it, they have to, when they get on board, we've identified critical submittals that have to come in right away. We have to have all the submittals in the next number of days or more, the 60 days or 45 or 60 days. But then we have stuff that we know it's going to have an extended lead time, and we want that in the door immediately. And that it's, yes, you just can't take the word that, yeah, I got it in this order. I'd like to see a purchase order. I'd like to see evidence that the manufacturer has received it. Maybe I go call the manufacturer directly. But yes, that proactive, trust but verify thing is really important.
Okay.
With where we are right now. With respect to your second question, we do not have in our contract what they would call liquidated damages, which is a static penalty, monetary penalty for every day that you don't produce what you're supposed to. But that doesn't limit or eliminate the district's opportunity to seek and recover damages should there be some. It's just the liquidated damages kind of has pros and cons to it in terms of the use of that. But not, and one of them is that if you state a static amount, then you cap that amount, right, so that you can't go after more. So not having that is actually, I think, in I don't mean to speak for your council, but that's kind of, but it's more in your interest to be able to say if there's damages, and we're gonna seek those. So ideally, that doesn't, we don't want to get to that point because
I would imagine not.
at the end of the day, it's still an inconvenience, it's still a problem, so the proactiveness is where we go. So if you want to,
You hit on the head, two sides of it. The first side is, as you said, examples like the equipment. We know there's things that have long lead times. As Chris said, we identify those as critical submittals and give them a deadline up front and chase them. And in a case like this, 2 of the contractors that you're looking to award tonight already have their submittals lined up. They're ready to submit and get the job going. The bus wash system, the vendor actually came out to us, as did the contractor, and said, hey, we have an 8% increase in our price going into 23. If we're second summer work in 24, there's going to be another increase in price. We're questioning if we can hold that price or not. So we said, well, then, okay, there's opportunity to move that up. Our schedule is based on the availability of that equipment. If you can guarantee that in 2023, we can work with the district and make that happen. So there's opportunity there. The flip side, as Chris said, it all starts with that conversation and that documentation. Did you order the equipment? Can you give me an order number? Can you give me a confirmed date? Okay, 6 weeks later, I'm going to check in. Was it ordered? Has anything changed? We have 2 projects under construction right now that we get regular updates from the HVAC contractor on equipment. Just holding those ship dates, and then same thing with the electrical contractor on associated components. So if those dates slip, we verified it, something happens, okay, now the district has the opportunity to go back and say, look, if you can't have this done, now I have an expense of changing classrooms, renting out space. Guess what? This is a real cost, and you're liable for it.
the other thing we've done too is that trust but verified. We have a network of offices across the country, and I've put people on doorsteps before, to say, okay, it's in production, so you don't mind if somebody stop over and take a look at where we are. And it usually doesn't come to that. Usually, if that's not where they are, the truth comes out pretty quickly. But that's a pretty effective tool as well.
Awesome. Thank you for the explanation.
No worries.
Any other questions?
No, that's right. Just comment, it's very comforting to hear you getting some very specific techniques that you're about. Because it's out there, and I think it gives you guys a whole lot of credibility with me, in that you're going to do your best to mitigate risk, and you're going to be healthy, and trust but verify is a significant Reaganism that a few of us live by. So
when you learn it the hard way, it leaves an impression too.
Yeah.
We actually say
Yes.
we actually say that's trust and verify.
Yeah.
I trust you're giving me information, but I'm still going to verify it.
Correct. So
It's been interesting getting to know some of the vendors too. So that certain names pop up and we're like, and they're all over. So.
Yeah.
good. Very good.
It is definitely a challenging environment that we're in right now. I mean, I've been doing it for a bit, and Vince has as well, and it's just, we don't take anything, can't take anything for granted anymore. That's just, that'll show up when it's supposed to. It doesn't. So, as you know, I'm sure everybody's felt this in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily indicative of anyone trying to be dishonest or misleading, but it's that hygiene is so jammed up.
Yep.
And it's obviously so global. It's just a gazillion moving parts.
Right.
It just behooves us to pay attention to all business, So,
Yeah, it makes it interesting.
yep.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
No, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, so everyone in favor of item F and those bid awards, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay. I was going to group the next few together, but I'm not, just because I want to leave H out by itself, and there's a little explanation there. So G is adoption of a IRS mileage rate. This is just going with the standard government rate, the rate of 65.5 up from 62.5 effective January 1. And again, that is the new IRS rate. All those, can I get a motion on G? Any, sorry, Carrie, we'll go Carrie, Gary, 1, 2 on that one. Any questions on this one? Okay. All those in favor of passing G, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, G passes. Next one is H. This is a policy. Now typically, well, I'll explain it in a minute. This is policy 7130, entitlement to attend age in residency. Be it resolved, the Board of Education approves. This says first reading of policy of 7130, entitlement to attend age in residency. And the policy is attached to board docs. Can I get a motion on this?
So moved.
First by Carrie, I will second that one. I'm going to ask the board to consider not doing a first reading and just go straight for approval on this policy. This is an existing policy. It's not even our policy. It is the law put out by Erie BOCES. There's an adjustment in the age. I don't know if the word I want to use is requirement.
Yeah.
Allowed age. And actually, I saw Mike last night at Freshman Information Night and told him I was going to ping him on this one. Mike, can you just kind of explain this a little bit, just so it's clear on why we're making this adjustment?
Yeah, so we wanted to be consistent with state compulsory ed law, and students, the age is for students turning 16, they have to stay in school the year in which they turn 16. In our policy, there's an added sentence at the end for students aged 16 to 17 unless they're working. So essentially, our age of attendance is 17. So in situations where we've worked through a series over many, many months, perhaps even years with students to try to work them toward graduation, they would make a decision, or it might just be it's the best thing for that child to go the equivalency diploma route. And so when we applied for those, a couple of our applications have been denied because our compulsory ed in our policy is age 17. So we want to remove that last sentence in our policy so that it's commensurate with, aligned with New York State compulsory ed law.
And not preventing the student from pursuing an alternative path, that's the best path for them.
Just a snippet of history on it is that the law was changed in 2012 so that a district like ours could adopt the 17 age, and the intent was it would keep kids at school. And in practice, it has a deleterious effect because what it does is it takes clubs out of our bag to help kids. So all of a sudden they're being denied access to programs that are, in some cases, kind of a last chance at high school equivalency diploma. And we're hearing no from the people offering those classes because just the language of our policy.
So if it is okay with the board, I would like to amend this to not be just a first reading, but adoption of policy 7130 so that we are compliant with the new Erie BOCES policy. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favor of this updated policy, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so on future policies, we will go back to the normal rules of a first public reading of any changes that we're making to the policy, and then a second reading for adoption. But in this case, I don't want to further delay anybody that might be choosing a different path.
Just kudos to Mike and the counselors at the high school who were like dogs with a bone on this thing, and gave me a nudge to give them a nudge in our application for approval. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you and for your support. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to group I and J together. I is the financial report. The board approves the attached financial reports for November 22 and December 22, and there's a whole list of financial reports that the board has access to in board docs. And then item J is the CSE, CPSE 504 reports, and those are also attached in our board docs. Can I get a motion for I and J, please? Dan's first. I will second that. All those is there any question on either of these items? If not, okay. All those in favor of I and J, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, both of those pass. We are on to closing items. Process review. The next scheduled board meeting is February 7th. So we can do agenda planning on the 31st or February 2nd, which is a Tuesday or a Thursday. Any takers on participation? Tim? Yeah, I know you can't with your work schedule, Gary. Can you make either of those dates or a day that week?
Morning, 8 a.m.
Okay, preference on the 31st or the,
31st is fine.
Tim, does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll cover that. Okay, so let's go 31st at 8 a.m. It'll be Gary, Danielle, and Tim.
I have a quick question at some point.
Sure, you want to save it for,
Probably should have asked the superintendent.
ask him that.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
curious if Connor or Eric, if you don't know the answer, that's fine, just get back to me, but, and I probably should have asked this a long time ago, but just given everything last week, where are we at with our AEDs? Like, does each building have one? Are they,
I can get a count, but we have a slew of them.
okay. And like, I feel like I've seen them in the hallway and stuff, but how are sporting events covered?
We actually did, as part of the past project, additional electrical runs to these poles to add more outside.
Okay.
I can get a count for you.
But we're covered. Basically, I guess my question is like, we've got one at the varsity game, and what about the kids over and?
Not so much the count, but the
Yeah.
locations is.
Yeah, like what about over at Austin Park?
So
Or
there's
not?
Austin Park,
Okay.
they're posted in the park, they have, the town has theirs up, they're up at the high school right now. You just gotta
People
look,
know, I was just gonna
you
say,
gotta look
maybe
for
people
them,
know
like the
that.
one here's in the front lobby.
Yeah.
There's also one at all times in the gator when Stacy's
Like
out
a
there.
quarter right. The only problem with that is if you've got a problem somewhere else. But yeah, I feel like I've seen one over at the soccer field.
Yeah,
Like it
it's-
blinks in the morning.
So when I
but-
said I did the electrical work, we took that into account of locations and added.
And
wherever.
the cold doesn't affect that at all?
Nope.
Really? And then how often do you have to replace those?
Dan might know that better.
It depends on how long, because they get serviced.
Oh,
You can change the batteries out, the pads, they have to be checked monthly, the pads expire, they just gotta
So they're
replace.
kind of like a fire extinguisher where they have to pass inspection every year or whatever?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And they're pretty self-explanatory, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
you
you know
turn it
there's
on,
training, but
yeah,
they
you
walk you
turn
through
it
the
on
whole
and
process.
it tells you what's
Color
in
coded.
it.
Yeah.
Are they inspected
Yeah.
monthly,
Yeah.
documented, all of it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who
it's
does
by a third party.
That does, Tammy does that
The-
right now.
Okay.
Yep.
And I don't need a number, I just need to know we're covered.
Yep, absolutely.
Scary.
Yeah.
A lot of us have these conversations.
But clearly what's they,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm responsible.
yeah.
Amazing.
Well, look,
Anything
that a couple of years
else?
ago, you know?
It
Yeah.
happened last year, 2 years ago, so you had a football player.
Right,
Uh,
yeah. It happened with a basketball player, ball and show a couple of years ago. Yeah, and,
Good question, Gary. Up next is just announcements. The next board meeting is February 7th. This says March 14th is the one after that, but there will be some other meetings in February, not board meetings, but budget workshops. And those dates and times will be communicated out to the public and posted in any place possible that you might want to find them. Parent squares, social media, website, anything and everything, so that we can try to get people engaged and so they can better understand our budgeting process, because it is all open to the public. Now we're at our second opportunity for public comment. I will not read the whole big, long, typed out thing that I had to read the first time, but if you would like to say anything, you are free to say it now.
Do I go up there? Okay.
You don't have to do your names, we got it.
So I just wanted to say, like, I didn't know, the first time that I heard that there was a curriculum night was whenever I had talked about the wax museum with, you know, on my social media. And someone said, oh, you should go to the curriculum night. And I was like, when is the curriculum night? I haven't read about it. And one of my friends, my close friends, she went to the first one because she had somehow read it, and she said she was only one of 2 people who went. So I, like just now, I didn't know that there was one at 5 today. And just now, I went through my, the app, and I searched curriculum, and then I was like, it pulls it up if I search curriculum because it's under kind of the thing. But looking at it, I wouldn't know, like it says it's at the high school, so I would think that that was a high school curriculum thing, not for a 4th grade parent or for a State Street parent. So I really don't think that I mean, I could ask, you know, everyone that has kids in my school, or parents, and I could ask parents that have kids in my school, did you know that there's a curriculum? I really genuinely think they would be like, oh, what? And what do you do at it? So I don't, like, someone said, I think maybe, Mr. Knuth said that, putting something specific in, like if it's geared toward Waterman, have Mr. Brown put it in to, you know, have flyers go home. I mean, I'm still, even though I'm on apps all the time, I'm still more apt to read flyers in my kids' book bags coming home, and see things, but I really, like, my friend told me, and she just said it the other day, she said, if you want to, like, know about the curriculum, you should go to the curriculum night. And as a parent, it's not that I'm not interested in my school, in my kids' school, what they're learning, but I trust educators before, like, I could go and listen, but I don't, it's such a vast curriculum night, could mean anything. Am I going to sit for 2 hours and listen to something about high school, which
So can I ask you a question? And I'm going to break board protocol because you're the only person here. We don't normally do back and forth.
Yeah.
But just pick your brain for a minute. So the weekly news and notes that comes out every Friday, the district-wide email, it's included in that. Do you think that parents are reading that or not?
I'm
and
not.
You can say no, and there's no like judgment. Okay. Because it's included
I'm
there.
like scanning. I mean, I'm scanning the first part because sort of the first sentence come up.
Yeah.
It's stupid, and like I said, I read apps all the time. I'm on all these things, but I just read the first sentence. It looked like that was it. It wasn't until I clicked on it that I was like, oh.
Okay, so that's helpful only because in the weekly Friday updates that Eric sends out to all the parents, it says, you know, this is what's going on this week, and there's a band festival this weekend and a play on Tuesday. You know, but it's kind of like a little summary. And in the one from last Friday, it said at 5 o'clock in the district office there is, and this one did say focus on secondary English and social studies curriculum.
So secondary.
Learn about human.
Like, is that secondary? Is that State Street or is that high school?
Good. It's secondary. It's high school.
612.
Okay.
612. But that's a good.
Yeah,
No, we have to
we
not
use a
talk
lot
like
of
an
that.
educator and talk like a regular
I can
person.
say grade 6 to 12.
Yeah, that's why.
So that would be-
when
that's
I
a
read
good-
that, I was like, I
Yeah, and that's a
assumed
fair
because
question.
it said the high school and it said high school humanities, high school student humanities. I wouldn't think that would apply for my State Street kid.
So this particular content, maybe not, but like the prior ones, like the science one was, it was State Street Science. So we've clearly got some work to do, and you know, and this is not to you, this is a general making out loud. It's hard when we have a general communication tool, then we all do the same. We're busy. I don't know. I didn't really look at. I usually go back and read things when I need to go there. Like yesterday at 5 o'clock when I was like, oh wait, there's a parent freshman night. Is my kid supposed to come with me? There was like four notes that came out, but we all do the same thing. We scan and then we're like, hey, yeah, I'll come back to that when I actually need to know it.
So maybe like on the app, like if it said the subject was curriculum night and then what specifically, not secondary.
Right. Change so be careful with our language to be more
specific, like
general.
straight
Less
Waterman,
educated.
State Street, or high school.
Regular people speak, like
Sure.
Yeah.
and maybe some other methods.
We're worse than the military.
Because my husband is like, he's interested from like a foreign background, like Gary and him have talked about it. He's from France, so he's always interested to know like what the curriculum, like he has a lot of questions about, and that's what when friends of ours were talking, that she's like, I'm gonna go to the curriculum night, and we're like, when is it? And she said, well, I went to the first one and it was at 8 o'clock. And he's like, well, I can't go to an 8 o'clock meeting. I work, and he works until.
This year we've connected them all to the board meeting nights, so they've all been at 5 o'clock on the same day as the board meeting. Because we were trying to make it as regular as possible.
Yeah.
After work, people can get over.
So we will do some work on communicating that, and I have a request back for you since you're here. You're the lucky winner of my prize. When the next one comes out, feel free to tell people about it. And say like, hey, you should go. If it's a subject of interest, help. So all it takes is one person to tell one more person, and then suddenly 4 people show up. But we can't take on all of the like responsibility of doing a phone tree to tell everyone to come. You know what I mean? We need some help. So
the next one is, what's this subject?
well, we've changed gears. We're going to do a quick survey
It may be different than the calendar.
There's a calendar. It's going to be February 7th when the next board meeting is, but we're going to just shift gears a little bit and do a very informal survey to try to rally some troops on a subject that they are.
Some of these
see if
things,
that helps.
that being said, you have to understand people who aren't working on some of these things, so we want
Well,
to make
we
sure we're
know
not
that.
scrapping
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
that. Yeah. But we can adjust dates and things like that.
If I heard you correctly, so if it says Waterman, you're reading that, but if it's this
If it's
district.
district
Well, no, so unfortunately, like, I didn't see any of the curriculum.
No, but I'm saying in general, if it's something from Waterman, you're reading that. Is that correct?
If it's something from State Street, I would
Or
read
State
it.
Street, right?
If it's something from State
State Street,
Street, I would read it. And if it was something, instead of just a general thing, if it said, like, attention curriculum night, I probably would be like, oh, there it is. And then read what it specifically was for.
One of the challenges too is like there's curriculum nights that the individual buildings put on.
Right, and
This
so
is a
that's also
district
confusing,
curriculum
because that's
committee.
what I thought that these, I didn't, my friend who had gone, she was one of two people, Christina Brooks, she was like, oh yeah, I was only one of two people, but it was like back and forth, and I was like, I've never heard of that, I didn't know they were doing that. So I think it's just a matter of explaining to parents on what it is, and yeah, I mean, I talk to people all the time, and I'm happy to do that. I mean,
Well, we look forward to seeing you on the 7th. Because you can
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, if there is nothing else, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Tim, second by Gary. All those in favor of getting out of here at 8:47. Where's this last? Thank you.